Thank you, Stephen. This is Shashi here from Quali, and I'm going to be joined by Ronnie, who is our Director of Technology. And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about what Quali does, what some of its top use cases and products and solutions are. And then hopefully towards the second half of the session, I'm going to see if Ronnie can come over and do a demo as well, as he does a deep dive around CloudShell, right? So a bit about the company, since some of you are fairly new to being exposed to us. What we do is we call ourselves a B2B automation and orchestration platform, and we deliver environments as a service. Now, this software platform is used by many of our customers, primarily to aid them in their digitization initiatives for a variety of use cases that we'll get into. Many of our customers include the Fortune 1000, the Global 100, and they are a mix of both enterprise as well as service providers. We have today about 8 out of 10 top service providers. We have a healthy mix of 3 of the top 5 US banking and financial services institutions, credit card companies, and cloud providers use us under the hood for their own efforts. In addition to that, we have very large, developer clouds like Cisco, DevNet, with whom we are sort of strategic partners, and we provide sandboxing solutions for them. Our investors originally come from Israel. We have Evergreen and Gemini. These are the 2 principal investors originating from Israel. And then we also have Dell EMC, which is an investor into the company. Okay. So I talked about, environment as a service. This is a very broad topic, and typically we focus on 3 different use cases. So when I talk about environments, we have the ability to spin up environments for development and test teams. So they use us primarily in the pre-production stage of the life cycle. We're also used by DevOps architects as part of their CI/CD processes. And the primary benefit they derive in terms of setting up these environments, automating, orchestrating them, is that they get innovation velocity. It could be faster releases, it could be better productivity and collaboration between the development teams. And so that's sort of the top use case we have, with about 60+% of our deployments focused in there. The second use case is around spinning up environments for demos and proof of concepts. So here we work with sales, engineering teams, technical marketing teams, customer support organizations. And for them, they're looking to see how authentically can they reproduce a demo environment, for example, for their customer. And they look to make it as customized as possible for them. And in the process, end up accelerating their sales cycle. Likewise, if you're troubleshooting something and you're unable to find out the root cause analysis, customer support teams use it to replicate those environments and try to get to the issue resolution faster. The third use case is really around cybersecurity. So here we have organically been receiving inbound requests, especially as certification compliance become important. They use us to reproduce that environment and see how quickly can we help them establish certification processes or compliance as they upgrade between different releases or change things in their code or infrastructure. Likewise, cyber range is a very popular use case for us, primarily originating from defense institutions, where they can model, orchestrate very complex environments and use that to harden their security posture. So these are the 3 primary types of environments that we deal with, but there could be a few others. And one of the reasons why this is actually becoming very important as part of digitization initiatives is because setting up environments, tearing them down, and managing the whole life cycle is a very key component of most initiatives today. For example, you could take a simple mobile application on your phone, but if you look at the back end of that application, it could actually be resident across an on-premise or a public cloud infrastructure. It could have data dependencies. It could have security and privacy requirements. And then there could be certain middleware that it is interacting with. And again, you could have it be calling certain APIs either from a partner or a customer or a third party, as the case may be. So there's just a whole lot of moving parts behind some of what happens with even a simple front end. And if you now look at the notion of a tester who is expected to sort of test and make sure that all of these is working properly and take responsibility for the assurance, that's where it becomes a bit of a challenge for them, because previously they don't necessarily have a holistic view of the environment. They sort of are forced to function in silos, and that results in maybe security loopholes, performance issues, and other things that they would ideally like to prevent early on in the dev test aspect of the life cycle. And if we resolve this, then obviously you see the quality of releases improve, you see the risks coming lower, and things like that. So today, as you can imagine, there's a lot of emphasis on production environments. Today, again, I would say a majority of the investment is also in production environment, and that's the noise that we all see as well. But if you look at the organization itself, they're dedicating less than 20% of their resources towards production environments, because a lot of it is automated, a lot of it is kind of handled on the fly. The real complexity that we have seen is in pre-production. So in a way, it's sort of tip of the iceberg that we're focused on, because production loads are so important. But if you look at a majority of the enterprise teams and engineering organizations, almost 80% of their resources are in pre-production, in dev test. And this is where there is usually a best effort approach to investment. There's a lot of fragmentation that you see in terms of processes involved. When organizations are distributed, they follow siloed approaches. So all of this results in sort of lost productivity, which in turn impacts time to market, and there's a lot of manual processes involved here as well. So the question is, how do you sort of bridge the whole notion of environment efficacy and increase productivity across both pre-production as well as production? And so today, for a developer or a tester wanting to get access to an environment that is stood up, particularly if there is dependency on infrastructure, it could be virtualized infrastructure or physical infrastructure, this is sort of the skewed workflow that takes place today. They make a blueprint of what they want as an environment that needs to be ready. And then it's a ticket that goes into IT. And depending on the service request and the prioritization, that ticket can languish for quite a while. In many cases, we've seen our customers come back and say, look, it took weeks for us to just get this infrastructure stood up, because that is so critical and there is so little of that infrastructure. So once you get past that hurdle, there is the IT fulfillment. And once you get that environment stood up, you obviously need to rack stack, validate it according to the topology that you want, and then deal with the issues that I talked about before it's ready for consumption. So in most organizations, as I mentioned, this is a huge hurdle. Days, weeks, months, depending on how efficient that workflow is. And this is something that we had reinforced several times. Annually, we conduct a survey. In the last 3 years, we've been getting over 1,500 respondents, 2,000 respondents annually that are coming up. And this is from last year's survey, where we polled 1,300 enterprises. And what turns out from that survey is almost 65% of them have no self-service way to get this done. And when you're looking at key architectural initiatives, whether it's app modernization or move to the cloud, complexity, the environment complexity is actually a big barrier for them to make that happen. And then when you start to measure the time it takes for them to get access to that infrastructure and provision it, we're seeing it takes more than a month in 25% of the cases and several weeks in almost 50% of the cases. So this is the problem that we are actually striving to solve. And if you look at it, you can, in your minds, map it to sort of the blockbuster days of yore, when you wanted to go get a DVD, you had to drive through traffic, go to the store, you weren't sure if what DVD you wanted was ready or not. And so that's sort of the analogy that pops up in most people's mind. And if you want to change that experience, obviously, you need to take a different path. And The cliche of a lot of self-service experiences is the Netflix model as we know of today, where you want to have a movie, you can go to a catalog and you click the movie that you want to access and start streaming it. So that's sort of the approach we took in terms of providing a cloudified self-service model to environment delivery. There is a catalog that a designer publishes things to, and somebody can go from a user standpoint, click on the catalog or blueprint that they feel is more relevant to them, and boom, they get to start working on that almost instantaneously. Likewise, you are familiar with the notion of pausing a movie. You want to go get popcorn, or you're interrupted, and so you're pausing the movie. Now, a lot of cases in terms of environments, especially when physical infrastructure is involved, there is resource hogging because they go through so much trouble in terms of getting access to that infrastructure. Once they get it, they don't want to let it go. So there is a huge amount of inefficient usage of such infrastructure within innovation environments today. And so what we have made it possible is, just as you can pause a movie, you can save the state of that environment and bring it back when you're ready, and it comes back from the state that it was last set up in. So this actually minimizes resources hoarding, allows for things to be a lot more efficient. We call this a save and restore. And this is an announcement we made today at VMworld, saying we're debuting this functionality on the product. And likewise, as with things like Netflix, you can stream it across multiple devices. We have the ability to layer such environments on-premise, in the public cloud, or across a hybrid cloud. And much of it is abstracted from the underlying infrastructure, so it gives a huge amount of flexibility for anybody saying, I want to layer this on a certain cloud infrastructure, which they're free to bring. So that's the flexibility aspects of deployment. And if you start to net these out, you will see the problems that we outlined, how we're trying to take steps towards solving them with an as-a-service based delivery model for environments. So before I transition to Ronnie, I want to just share with you 3 things why we end up winning deals when we win them, and why are we differentiated in a way. The first is our ability to sort of model these resources and objects and bring them into the context of the environment. And that is actually a very powerful capability, because you can never predict what is in somebody's environment. Everybody's environment is fairly unique. They could have certain proprietary things there. They could have legacy things there that are running for a long time. But there is a need to bring all of these under the automation umbrella. So that is where, for us, having the ability to give them the ability to model it and bring this in, they view it as a hugely differentiating function. And we have open sourced the way in which we can model it as well. The second is we do the whole stack. It can go from layer 0 or layer 1, as you call it, all the way up to the application. And the ability to orchestrate the full stack in its entirety, and the ability to put it on any cloud of your choice, actually becomes a very powerful capability. So this, as I said, is more designer friendly, because it's the architect who is envisioning this and developing it. The second reason why we win is we made it a lot easier for IT teams, because many times they are the ones responsible for delivery, to also have better control. They are supposed to be facilitators, and they are owning governance and cost mechanisms. So for them to see the usage aspects of it, utilization, how efficient is it, what is the cost associated for it, and enable them to take better decisions from an administrative standpoint is very powerful. Today we have VMs being spun out. In fact, downstairs I was being asked by somebody saying they have this huge problems of VMs being instantiated, but nobody's tearing them down in a timely way. And so that leads to cost issues. So with this, it's a very administrative friendly view. And the third, as I talked about, is more of a user benefit, which is they can now click on a catalog, get access to that environment, and reserve it. We support reservation and scheduling of hardware as well. And so with that comes the ability to customize it based on the privileges they have been given, and it's inherently designed to collaborate. So these are the 3 areas where we stand up highly differentiated versus what's out there. And we run into a lot of proprietary solutions as well that some of our customers have developed, and then they run into scaling issues, and then we intersect with them. So the last slide that I wanted to share with you is just the product itself. What I talked about is what we call as the CloudShell platform. It's a software platform, and we have two flavors of it today. One is called Pro, and this is sort of the flagship product which we've had for the past 4 years. It is purpose-built for physical infrastructure, hybrid, and multi-cloud scenarios, so it's very rich in its ability to model, orchestrate physical or virtual environment resources. The second is something we introduced at VMworld last year. It's called VE, or the Virtual Edition. It's a lighter weight version which is mostly for virtualized environment, and it runs on a single cloud. And with both of these, we give our customers the ability to bring their own cloud infrastructure and work with us on top of it. So I hope that was a good overview for you in terms of what we are as a company, some of the top use cases, and pique your interest in CloudShell. And with that, if there are no questions, I'll pass on to Ronnie for a deeper dive.
I have a few questions. So does this work with specific hardware, or is it vendor agnostic?
It is vendor agnostic, and that is where the modeling capability also comes in. As Ronnie will go into it, there are a number of things we support out of the box, so to say, in the sense that we've already modeled it, and you can drag and drop that into the interface. But there are others where you might need to custom build it, the integration aspects of it. So that is something we've open source, and many of our customers and partners contribute and do that as well.
And does it work with, I mean, is it, you said it's the full stack, so you're talking about server, network, storage within the data center, whether it be on-prem or in a public cloud?
That's right, yeah. And it goes beyond infrastructure as well. And as you'll see the demo, it can be representative of the environment in totality.